Welcome to the 21st episode of the Film Illiterates podcast, your home for uninformed, unfiltered, shit, I forgot to
Ill-advised.
open up
Ill-advised.
the intro. Movie talk! I'm your host, Joe Campbell, and with me are my co-hosts, Alex Patin.
Hello.
And Nathan Stone.
Hey.
Today, we are going to be looking at a director that Alex likes and forced us to watch a whole bunch of his movies.
Oh, come on, Joe. You like him as well.
Well, we'll get into that. Derek Cianfrance. Am I pronouncing that right?
I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those names that I've seen written out a lot. Never had to speak out loud until today. So we're going to be looking at three of his movies, Blue Valentine, Place Beyond the Pines, and The Light Between Oceans.
I mean, really, he only has 3 movies, so this was kind of an easy choice.
3 main ones.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I think he has 1 or 2 earlier movies, but it's
he's done a lot of
I haven't seen those.
documentaries,
Can't find much about them.
So he has a lot of work in that.
He does commercials too, interestingly enough.
That's true. He does do
I should
that
check
as
some of
well.
those out. Actually, I'm really curious about that now.
Oddly enough, he has a really cool commercial for Dick's Sporting Goods.
Really?
Yeah, it's a whole like one take. It's pretty rad looking.
But before we get into that, we'll get into what we have been watching on our own lately. So, Nate, kick us off tonight.
I was going to let Alex go since he's our guest of honor.
Dang it.
So can I actually pass the baton to
by
him?
all means.
All right. I've been watching anime again. I bet that's a big surprise. What else do I don't? What do you mean? I watch anime. I play video games. I watch YouTube. That's what I do.
Yeah, it's what he can afford.
Exactly.
What do you watch on YouTube lately?
I watch Let's Plays and stuff like that, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
I started watching a channel I found a little bit ago, Donut Media. They do a lot of car videos. So that's been pretty fun. They have a really cool series called Up to Speed, where they just go through like the history of like one specific car or one specific like company or something like that. So that's been really informative, and it's fun.
Are you a car guy, Alex?
Not really. I like cars. I mean, I always have since I was younger, but I've never really gotten into them a lot. I mean, like I like to know a lot of like the different makes and models and stuff like that, but I don't know like going like under the hood. I'm completely clueless when it comes to that kind of thing.
Okay. So the show or the channel that you're watching, like, do they like focus on specific type of sports cars or just all cars in general?
Just everything. Like their Up to Speed series. Mm-hmm. They have episodes for everything from like supercars to literally the Chevy Astro.
Oh, nice.
Like that block of a van.
Oh, sweet.
So they've got everything. It's informative and it's also fun to watch too.
Nice.
Like the hosts are all really interesting and engaging. So that's always cool.
That's really cool.
Keeps you interested.
So now let's talk about anime.
Okay. So I caught up with, I think there might have been a new episode came out this week, but I caught up with Maidens of the Savage Season.
Mm-hmm.
It's honestly becoming one of my favorites for this season. It's so good. It's slice of life, so it deals a lot with relationships and stuff like that, as you kind of often do. But in watching the the Derek Cianfrance movies, they're not really that far apart. They both kind of focus, like I said, on relationships between people, and kind of how everything can really like fall apart and implode at like a moment's notice.
Okay, because most like anime slice of life are kind of a little bit more lighthearted, at least from my like experience with them. Yeah, like Nichijou is obviously a lot more lighthearted. So that you'd say this one dabbles a little bit more in just the heavier family issues and things that are part of just like life in general. Partially,
maybe not so much family issues, but just like romance and whatnot. Mm-hmm. There is comedy to it, so it's not like just some. It's not like a
dose of feels that you're just getting hit every single episode.
I mean, you kind of are, but there's stuff to balance it out. So it's not just you're not crying every second from the moment you start up the episode.
Oh yeah.
But like I said, I've been really loving that one. I think it's really fantastic. I haven't really been watching anything else. I need to catch up on Danmachi again. Mm-hmm. Continue watching Demon Slayer. I
was gonna actually ask if it was Goblin Slayer or Dragon Slayer. I forget which one.
Yeah, and then I also caught up with the show Given, which is pretty good. It's about a bunch of high school. I think they're they're a little bit older. High school or maybe a little bit older or somewhere on that.
Young adult, we'll call it that.
Yeah, something like that. But a group of 4 guys starting a band. Yeah, it started really good. It's continuing on really solid. I probably should have expected this going into it, knowing it was 4 dudes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it gets a bit gay, which has been interesting.
Yay.
But they handled it really well, and like the kind of developing the friendships and relationships of like a lot of the different characters in the show is all over. It works really well so far, and the music's solid.
Yeah,
Can't complain.
Yeah, it's good music.
Has there ever been an anime with bad music?
Probably, yeah.
There have been a few.
Yeah, I don't know of any off the top of my head that had like bad music.
That's probably why you don't hear from them, is because when the music and the soundtrack sucks, then the rest of Japan will make sure they shut it down really quick.
Yeah, I think it just gets forgotten. But yeah,
Alex, you got anything else for us?
Nah, that's about it. Yeah, just and then more Destiny.
More Destiny, lots of Destiny.
More.
Yeah, but that's what I've been up to.
Cool.
So Nate, what have you been watching lately?
Okay, well, luckily for me, I caught the famous holiday cold this past week. So pretty much I was like bedridden with a fever. So I just caught up on a lot of Netflix shows that I've been meaning to catch up on. One of the ones I actually recently watched is the new Dark Crystal series that just got launched on Netflix, The Age of Resistance.
I watched part of the first episode of that. I haven't finished it yet.
Okay, I won't spoil it for you, but let me just say this. I have never really found the need or the gumption to actually compare a show to be better than Game of Thrones. But this show kind of went there, and I was impressed.
Wow.
I mean, these are Muppets, okay?
Yeah.
And just like a fantastical world. But it gets Game of Thrones really fast and really good. The writing is actually surprisingly good for what this is, being like a prequel for the original Dark Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
I was not expecting it to be as good as it is. But everything that they put into us, I mean, they're working with the Jim Henson company with all the puppets. So it's like using the actual puppets of the Skeksis, of the, oh crud, I forgot the name of the little elf things, but they've gotten really good. And the CGI and how it's used in it, you can't even tell sometimes. I mean, there's like some big sweeping shots, like Peter Jackson establishing shots that you can totally tell they're CGI, but stuff that they use for like the eyes or even the nostrils to make it have that life texture to it, it's done pretty seamlessly. Like for the budget it was good. I was like, wow. And the voice acting, I'm going to say the voice acting is the best part. I'm not going to say who Simon Pegg voices in this, but he's one of the Skeksis, and I was blown away. I was like, dude, you're like doing some Frank Oz shit with this. How are you pulling this off? And you just are, I guess when you have people who are just that dedicated, it's going to pull off very well. But I watched that. It was good. I'm actually excited for the second season.
You know what's interesting is that, so I actually showed my 4-year-old daughter the original movie within the past week or so. And we started watching the first episode together. Didn't get very far. Just had other things to do. But from what I've heard, it's probably a good thing that I didn't get very far in the show with her.
Yeah.
I've seen a very strange clip of a Skeksis peeing, which is very
yeah. Like I said, it gets very Game of Thrones. I will say that. Like I said, in just all areas. But I would say I'm kind of glad you just showed her the first episode, because the second episode is when shit gets real. Like a lot of dark stuff happens. There's a torture scene in this.
Yes.
They pull out someone's eyeball and it's great.
They pulled an eyeball of a puppet. What?
It's the tension and how it was building up. I was like, oh my gosh. This is for families, okay?
We're going here, really.
Happy Time Murders got nothing on this.
Aside from that, I mean, I've been trying to catch up on Stranger Things, still kind of on that. But one of the shows I actually recently watched, and I completely forgot that Netflix had produced this, but David Fincher and Tim Miller got together and they produced this one series called Love, Death, and Robots. And it's basically an anthology series, but it's like all these guys produced and wrote and directed these animated shorts, all revolving around those three things. And
I've actually seen a few of these. I was working through it back when it came out. Never finished it, but I've seen probably about half of it.
I mean, for like this is the first time that they're doing something like this, and just like the amount of detail in it. Like there's this one that looks very Mass Effect as far as like graphics and CGI. I'm like, almost felt like if this was the budget for a Mass Effect movie, this is kind of like up there with it. Like it's really good animation. I mean, the stories get a little like promiscuous, very pervasive, but I don't know. I couldn't expect anything else from being produced by Tim Miller and David Fincher.
Yeah,
but good stuff. I think I was kind of impressed.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to go back and finish that up because I was quite enjoying how much of it that I've seen so far. Anyway, you got anything else for us, Nate?
No, that is pretty much it.
All right, so I'll keep it quick too. Just go over two things that I've seen recently. Who is the king of big dumb destruction movies?
Michael Bay.
Well, it's Michael Bay.
Roland Emmerich. Oh my gosh, you guys.
Oh well, okay. Well, he didn't say
Okay.
disaster movies. He's kind of known for doing those.
Roland Emmerich is my go-to schlock director. I've loved his movies as a kid. I love The Day After Tomorrow. Watching them today, I still love his movies.
You like his Godzilla that he did? Be careful how you answer that.
Look, Godzilla was the first PG-13 movie I ever saw. My dad took me to see it. I was a big Godzilla fan. I loved that movie as a kid. I rewatched it recently. It's not that bad. I still enjoy it. So yes, I like his Godzilla movie.
Joe, I don't know if we can be friends anymore.
But anyway, I love Roland Emmerich. He is my go-to schlock director of choice. He's kind of my guilty pleasure director. So I've been going through and I've been trying to work through his entire filmography, the ones that I haven't seen yet. And I recently watched a 1985 movie he made called Making Contact. The synopsis says, believing to be able to communicate with his deceased father, a young boy develops psychic powers where he uses them to try to stop supernatural forces threatening his family and friends, especially a possessed ventriloquist dummy. This movie's pretty good, guys. So I've seen like 3 of Roland Emmerich's earlier movies. He was a German director, and he made movies in German starting off. But even his early movies had this weird kind of pro-American thing to them. Like, you know how all of his blockbusters have, flag-waving, pro-military, hoorah, kind of American dream?
Yeah, pretty much like what Michael Bay does, but just more tastefully.
Yeah, exactly. Or even like The Patriot, we have Mel Gibson running through a British horse with the American flag.
Or Independence Day, where it's like, the American president's going to fight the aliens and take him down with a jet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's always had this very interesting kind of super pro-American approach to his movies. Mm-hmm. And watching his earlier movies, his earlier German movies, he still has that, which is strange to me. One of his earlier movies called Ghost Chase is set in Los Angeles. It's in English with American actors about these guys running around Hollywood. I forget, solving a supernatural crime. Making Contact, the one that I just watched, is like the most Spielberg ripoff of all the Spielberg ripoffs. This movie is E.T. meets Poltergeist.
And it's blatantly obvious. Like, you can tell, like, they're ripping off the same visuals and the same...
It's so... It's pro-American pop culture consumerism. Like, this kid gets superpowers, right? Uh-huh. Like, psychic powers from talking to his dead dad. And he moves things with his mind. And there's a scene early on where some bullies go in to attack him. And one of the bullies is dressed up as Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. And the kid makes all of his Star Wars toys come to life. Like, there's like an Atwalker walking around shooting lasers. The Millennium Falcon flies around. There's TIE fighters. It's crazy. And then later on in this movie, the evil ventriloquist dummy, ghost thing, whatever, is making kids see what they fear most. And Darth freaking Vader himself shows up to terrorize this bully. This movie's crazy.
I'm kind of wondering, like, how many royalties they had to pay the different studios just to feature all that.
Oh yeah. I'm wondering if they paid any. Like, in that same scene where all the Star Wars stuff is attacking the kid, there's also like a Bert and Ernie on a little flying magic carpet or car or whatever flying around. There's Mickey Mouse stuff all over this kid is into American pop culture.
Okay. I mean, I'm kind of hoping this movie made more than what they had to pay back all the companies that they ripped off, because I don't know how well this movie did when it came out.
I have no idea, but the movie's fascinating because it out of all of Roland Emmerich's movies, it seems to be ripping off the Spielberg formula the most. You know, there's this kid, he has these psychic abilities. There's the government shows up and quarantines off his house at one point, you know, with all the trucks driving in, all the CIA agents. A bunch of kids have to band together to fight the evil ventriloquist dummy. And
I'm pretty sure at the time when this came out, the studio was like, you know what, we need our own Goonies, E.T. Spielberg, you know, knockoff just to compete. Ronald Emmerich, you're doing it.
Well, the interesting thing is that I rented this from Scarecrow Video, like a video rental store in Seattle, and they had both the extended German cut, which is longer by like 20 minutes, and the US cut, which has a completely different soundtrack. And I watched the extended cut, the German cut, because I thought that, oh, it's the longer cut. Maybe it's you know, Roland Emmerich was still a German filmmaker. Maybe it's for a German audience. They got the original cut and they didn't get the trimmed down version. But I'm starting to wish that I'd watched the American cut, because for one thing, the American cut has a better soundtrack, which again is totally Spielbergian. The German cut has kind of this cheaper sounding soundtrack. And for another thing, watching the German cut, it became fairly obvious that all the actors were speaking English anyway and were being dubbed into German.
Oh,
weird.
All weird. Right. Okay.
So I just wish that I'd watched the US cut, even though it's 20 minutes shorter, which also probably, honestly, having watched the movie, it felt too long. So cutting 20 minutes out would have probably made it a lot better anyway. But also, it would have been distracting seeing characters speaking English, but reading subtitles anyway, because everything's been dubbed back into German. So I kind of want to rewatch the American cut of this and see if I like it better. I already enjoyed it as it is. Like, it's dumb, it's silly, and it's like a ripoff of a ripoff, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like 3 degrees removed from Steven Spielberg, but it's still kind of fun.
Honestly, Joe, I think the one thing that kind of just caught my attention is that you got this from a video rental store. Like, I'm surprised that those still exist up there in Washington.
Oh yeah, I will always take an opportunity to plug Scarecrow Video, which I think is one of the few remaining video rental stores. And they've got, if I'm not mistaken, I think they have the largest selection of movies anywhere in the world, all together for public rental. So
really?
I mean, I've rented DVDs, Blu-rays, VHSs. They have laser discs there. It's pretty great.
Well, laser discs, that's even better.
Basically, I have a running list of movies I want to see that I can't find online, and I just kind of pick them up from Scarecrow Video whenever I need to go, because they have pretty much everything.
So you hear that, people up in Washington, go to Scarecrow Video Rental store for all your video rental needs. Support
Keep
small
them in business. They're a great company.
Keep them in business just so Joe can keep going and getting weird movies.
Yeah, they're a dying breed.
Last thing I'm just going to touch on really quickly here is a movie from this year called Nightmare Cinema. Nightmare Cinema is 5 strangers converge at a haunted movie theater owned by the projectionist, played by Mickey Rourke. Once inside, the audience members witness a series of screenings showing them their deepest fears and darkest secrets over 5 tales. So this is an anthology movie. I know in a previous episode I talked about Southbound, which is a horror anthology movie. This is another one. The directors are Alejandro Brugué, Joe Dante, Mick Garris, Ruhei Kitamura, and David Slade.
Obviously, you bought this, or you checked this out just for the Joe Dante segment.
Mainly the Joe Dante and Mick Garris. This is one that I've been wanting to see because I'm a big fan of Joe Dante, and I'll take any Joe Dante I can get these days. And he directed a segment of this movie. And here's the interesting thing about this. I watched this on VHS, actually, because they released it on a limited edition VHS, and I pre-ordered it right away, even though I hadn't seen it, because I really wanted to see the movie. And I thought, yeah, VHS is limited edition. It'll be fun. So I can't tell if I enjoyed this more because it was a low resolution cropped quality and it kind of matched the Devil May Care fun, over the top nature. And I feel like if I watched this in HD in the proper aspect ratio, I feel like the cheap CGI would stand out more, because there isn't a whole lot in there, but there are some scenes where I'm watching this, I'm like, oh, that's cheap CGI, but it looks okay because it's like I'm watching it on an old VHS as opposed to looking, like pristine. And I enjoy the VHS look. Typically, if given the option, I will always take the original version as intended in the correct proper aspect ratio with the high definition. But every once in a while, it's fun to plug into VHS and just see it as kind of an alternate version of the movie. The weird thing is that that's the only way that I've seen this movie so far, and I enjoyed it, and I feel like I would have enjoyed it less the way it was intended to be seen. That being said, the movie itself is a lot of fun for an anthology. It starts off really, really strong. The first couple segments are stronger than the rest, but what I like about this is that there's a lot of variety. And a lot of these horror anthologies, there's some stylistic variety, but it's kind of like, oh, yeah, you know, on VHS, it's, oh, here's another kind of similar feel, another story with a similar kind of feel, just in a different style. This one seems to be tackling different genres of horror. So the first segment is like a spoof of slashers, but it's I think spoof isn't the right word. It's basically a slasher that's very tongue-in-cheek, but they never wink at the camera. It's like a ridiculous parody of a script, and everyone's playing it completely straight, and it's so wonderfully fun. There's one point there that a meteor crashes to the ground, and some characters are looking at it, and one of them says, "We should leave it to science. We shouldn't go touch it." And this jock looks over his shoulder and says, "Fuck science." And the whole thing's like that. And there's, I don't want to spoil it, but there's one moment with a gag with some knives with the slasher. That's one of the funniest damn things I've seen in movies from this year. And it started the series off on such a great foot that it did get a little bit disappointing. I've seen some people say like, oh, it's bad from then on, but the first one is great. No, the rest of them are great, because one of them goes into this weird kind of black and white Lynchian surrealist thing. They have a Sixth Sense knockoff that's just basically their ghost story. They've got kind of like a supernatural demon episode that takes place in I think it's like a Catholic school, where you get this wonderful sequence where this priest is just hacking up little kids with a broadsword. Jeez. I don't know. This thing is crazy.
A whole broadsword?
You need to watch it to find out. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I think, Joe, for this year for Halloween, I'm really kind of going to probably encourage you to watch some of these movies that I've been looking into, but I will have to take a look at this one, because this one's kind of already tickling my fancy. Just because like it sounds very Stephen King-ish as well, and just the whole premise.
Yeah, but the whole thing's very silly. It's kind of like it's schlocky horror, but just the hits. So it takes like, oh, what is the standout scene from this kind of movie? Let's take that and just give it its own segment, move on to the next thing. And there is a lot of cheap writing, acting, cheap effects, but that's kind of the fun of the whole thing.
And knowing Joe Dante being attached to this, it's like he's gonna bring the fun in horror. So
yeah, Joe Dante's segment is kind of the I want to say the grossest of the bunch. It's like a weird Twilight Zone-esque kind of surgery body horror sort of thing, which is interesting. It's not his best work, but it was fun as part of this whole thing. Mick Garris does the wraparound segment, which involves Mickey Rourke, and that was pretty well done too. So if you're a fan of schlocky horror, I would recommend Nightmare Cinema. If you can get a hold of the VHS, I think it's sold out now, but if you can find it, I would recommend watching on that just for the novelty.
Really? Sold out? A VHS would be sold out?
Well, they only made like 100 copies of it, and Mick Garris signed half of them.
And it does sound like a pretty like
limited
cult kind
edition,
of thing. Yeah, that like people would snap up.
Yeah. You might be able to find some. I wouldn't be surprised if you could find some on eBay. But yeah, it's check it out this Halloween. If you like schlocky, fun, dumb, cheap horror, I'd recommend it. Nightmare Cinema.
I do have one I'm recommending you should watch, Joe. That is Stephen King's Sleepwalkers. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
Oh, I know about that. I haven't seen it, but I know about it.
You need to watch it. I think you'd have a blast watching it.
Absolutely. I agree. I've heard the How Did This Get Made episode on it, and it sounds wonderful and terrible all at the same time.
It's great.
Anyway, let's jump into our director spotlight, Derek Cianfrance.
You got any talents?
Like hidden talents?
Can you dance? You can tap dance?
Can you?
No. Here, I'll play a song and you dance. Okay. I can't really sing. I have to sing goofy in order to sing. Like I have to sing stupid. Okay?
Okay.
All right, I guess I have to lead this one.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, do it.
All right, so one of the reasons why I chose Derek Cianfrance was he's got a pretty tight discography, so it's easy to kind of get through. But I really like he has a real main like focus in his movies. He doesn't really go out and try a bunch of different genres and see what sticks. He just kind of he's got his thing. He does it really well. So I guess to kind of open up, we'll start with his first main movie, which was Blue Valentine, and so I'm kind of curious what you guys both thought of it, and we'll start with Nate here.
Okay, I remember when this movie first came out. Like, this was a movie that just, like, a lot of critics were talking about. Like, this is something that no one had ever really seen before. And kind of going off of like Derek Cianfrance's like style, he kind of his style is very off the beaten path. Like, you definitely take a feel for it, and he's definitely doing stuff that's not very conventional that you would see even in a lot of indie films.
Oh yeah.
And this one definitely fits with that. Like, the way I think at the time that it was pitched, I remember the trailer. I went and saw the trailer again just to kind of get that first impression from the film. And it almost feels like it's like, you know, just your typical indie love story, but it's not. It's actually quite the opposite. It's a falling out of love story. Yeah,
I mean, it, you know, watching the trailer with or not really knowing a whole lot about the movie, it kind of, you might get the sense that it's just they fall in love and they have a kid and it's a great life, and it's just not that at all.
No, it's not actually. In fact, a lot of the scenes that kind of I kind of rewatched again just to keep it fresh in my mind, but a lot of the stuff I remember about it is just really raw and just very exposed. Like there's a big part of the, you know, when they're, you know, at the final stages of the romance where Ryan Gosling wants to take Michelle Williams, his wife, you know, try to rekindle whatever they can to salvage of their marriage. And they go to, basically it's a sex hotel just to spend a night there. Yeah. And a lot of just the stuff that I remember that sticks out is just how that goes down and what kind of unfolds after. And I think there's a certain realism he captured in that.
Yeah. I'd watched it years ago. And so rewatching it now, I had forgotten how uncomfortable that movie can be. In some movies, it'll be really movies kind of that might follow a similar sort of story. It'll take some like really beautiful shots and it's all like very pretty looking. And what I love about Derek Cianfrance and specifically like this movie is just, like you said, it's so raw. It's so just right up in a very uncomfortable, very intimate space that you just can't really get away from. So you're just kind of you're just stuck there, kind of watching everything unfold right in front of you, and just the whole relationship just implode.
And I think just one of the things that just adds to the rawness, especially like I did a little looking into this with Derek, when he basically was working with Ryan and Michelle, he really didn't have them rehearse these scenes. He actually just kind of like just only had them kind of like get to know each other, you know, have memories, share experiences. But then when they went on set, that was like really the first time they're acting all this out. Yeah. And I think that's something that really he lends to his style of directing very well, is he's trying to capture humanity at its rawest form. And going on to like his other stuff that he will do later, he is trying to find the right balance of where reality and fiction kind of meet. Like, this is not them actually doing this stuff, but I'm trying to capture it as if this is them experiencing it for the first time. And I think that just lends to it, where he is one of those directors who I think has owned this craft of, you know what, I want to give these actors this permission to feel these things, to respond these certain ways. So I'm not going to have them rehearse it and let it be very rigid or staged. He doesn't want to go for a very scripted, even though the script itself, actually, I was looking at the script, it's pretty much almost word for word. I thought there was going to be a lot of improvisation throughout it, but no, it's actually pretty much the way it's written. And he really just said, I'm just going to have them act it out right then and there. We're going to get the cameras rolling. And I think that's just what makes that movie shine so well.
Yeah, there's an interesting point on that. And in the scene on the bridge, to kind of go into that scene, Derek Cianfrance went up to Ryan Gosling. He told him, Michelle has a secret, and you have to do whatever you can to get the secret out of her. And then he went up to Michelle Williams and told her, you can't let him know. And so they just that's how they kind of went into that scene. Yeah. And funny enough, when Ryan Gosling climbs over the fence, that wasn't part of it at all. He just did that. I think one of the producers or someone was on set and was just like almost ran out after him, because there's no safety net at all. There's just nothing there. He could have fallen and died.
Okay,
stop, come down.
You gonna tell me?
Just come down, I'm not kidding you.
You gonna tell me what it is?
Please, come down. Come down, please stop.
You want me to go over the edge?
No, I want you to come down.
Tell me what it is.
Come on, it's dangerous.
You gonna tell me?
No, stop. Please, come on, please. I'm pregnant. Stop, come back, please. Please come down. Please come down.
But it's, yeah, like kind of you saying, it's just like, they're just kind of given more of a direction and kind of more almost like emotional end place for the scene to get to, and they just kind of fill in the spaces there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just, that is kind of what I really love about him. It's just like Derek Cianfrance really kind of gives his actors the ability and the freedom to really kind of like live in their characters and just surprise him.
Yeah. And he did mention that actually in an interview, that he loves it when he gives his actors that permission to just, I want you to try something new, surprise me, and I want you to fail in the process, because that is really what it means to be human. You're like, you're not going to do everything right the first time. You're going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to cross the line that you shouldn't cross. And I feel like in this movie, he's doing a lot of that, especially just even like his camera work and how he's shooting a lot of the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, we'll probably talk about cinematography, but the way he shoots it, it just feels very run and gun. There's this kind of guerrilla style to it, but at the same time, it's like it creates its own little energy to it as well.
Yeah.
Did either of you guys notice that? So I'm kind of jumping the gun and talking about Place Beyond the Pines here a little bit.
That's
but
fine. We can get into it.
I remember when Place Beyond the Pines came out, and I saw that Ryan Gosling was in it, and I thought it was going to be one of those things where, the director and the actor are going to be teaming up for all of their projects. They're kind of a duo.
Yeah.
But since then, The Light Between Oceans has come out. Ryan Gosling wasn't in that, and I noticed that Ryan Gosling is kind of playing a very similar character in both movies. And so I'm wondering if it's not so much that they Cianfrance and Gosling like working together, which I'm sure they do, but it's more of Cianfrance had this part in Place Beyond the Pines and thought, it's Ryan Gosling would be perfect for this role, because in both movies they're kind of very juvenile characters, very naive about how the world actually works, and in kind of this almost like childlike state for an adult.
Yeah. I think if anything, like I remember reading this, and I think you'll talk about this, like his scripting process or when he's writing the scripts, but he will definitely write or even just go back to a script and rewrite it when he has an actor in mind, when he knows that this character just fits so well or meshes so well with this actor. Yeah. He's going to give them that permission, and it's just going to shine through. And I think with these characters that he has Ryan Gosling plays, he's just playing to Ryan Gosling's strengths as a character, or even just as an actor he was at the time. I think at the time, Ryan Gosling was trying to kind of get himself out of the whole Notebook, romantic, stud of a guy. I think he just finished doing The Ides of March or something like that. So I think
really good.
Ryan Gosling was just trying to position himself as more of like a character actor, and he was trying to find those roles. So when these parts like leapt off for him, he's like, I want to do this. And he put his own like material in that.
Well, that was around the time that Gosling was being in Nicholas Winding Refn movies too, wasn't it?
I think it was at the same time that was kind of coming around. Yeah. Well, he was just finished doing Drive and Only God Forgives.
Yeah. Still a fantastic movie, by the way.
Yeah.
I know you guys hate it. But...
Check out our video.
They said like adults,
Yeah.
Tell him it's for me. I'm still his father. I can give him stuff.
I'm Officer DeLuca. We're here to search your house.
What for?
We're looking for the money that Luke Glanton may or may not have given to you.
14 grand.
The lion's share is going to our hero.
This is your problem. This is our problem, and I'm bringing it to your attention because that's what I should do.
I want to do two in one day.
Yo, get up!
I'm not gonna let you bring us both down.
There's a way out of this. You're not gonna like it.
So I guess we can move on to Place Beyond the Pines, which for me personally, I think that's my favorite one.
I think for all of us, it's our favorite as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. When this came out in theaters, I saw it 3 times in theaters, and I have no regrets.
Honestly, Joe, actually, this was kind of a fun story. Like, I think when you were trying to like get into doing movie reviews, this was like one we were kind of like test piloting, and we were trying to do a movie review on, just because it left on such a good impression on us.
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised. I do remember that somewhere out there is footage for a lost this is kind of a tangent, but a Lost 300 Rise of an Empire video that we shot. I have no idea where that footage went, but it's out there somewhere.
Somewhere in the ether. No, this was a good movie. Revisiting it again, I actually keep forgetting like just how well done this movie is. It's like I think this is like if everything that Derek Cianfrance is good at is put into one movie, I think this is it. Like this is a good example of it.
A fair warning too. We I think with Place Beyond the Pines, and I think it's fair to say Light Between Oceans, we will be getting into spoilers.
Yeah, should throw that out there. Just because it's kind of hard to talk about all of them, all the movies, and kind of everything that really went into them without getting into it. And there's a lot of stuff to spoil, especially in Place Beyond the Pines.
Oh yeah.
So just a fair warning.
But I just want to talk about quickly about style wise, looking at both Place Beyond the Pines and Blue Valentine. They're both shot with this very interesting kind of naturalistic cinematography that's still super beautiful. He uses depth of field extraordinarily well. And I don't want to say necessarily like handheld, but there's like a very kind of natural, almost handheld feel to both of these two movies. And I initially thought that Blue Valentine, because Blue Valentine is interesting. Just full disclosure, I'm not a big fan of Blue Valentine in general. I think it's just because I didn't quite get the movie. It wasn't really my sort of thing, kind of the morose anti-romance kind of a thing. I thought it was interesting, but I wasn't quite sure what it was driving at in the end. But I do like the way it was shot, especially how he did the different kind of film qualities between the present day and the past, and kind of the rosy film color. Of the past, and then kind of the danker, starker modern day segments. But in Place Beyond the Pines, he does, I don't know, it's very stylistically similar to Blue Valentine in that everything's shot with this very shallow depth of field and kind of naturalistic way, almost as if we're just kind of spying in on these people doing their normal everyday stuff.
Yeah.
Well, kind of funny thing, actually. I think he got the same DP who did a lot of movies with Steve McQueen. It was the same DP that did 12 Years a Slave. And if you kind of see it, there's similar trademarks of that style of how he uses, Sean Bobbitt.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, you talk about how the cinematography is similar to Blue Valentine, but it's different DPs. The original DP for Blue Valentine, he was set to shoot Place Beyond the Pines, but in an interview, Derek Cianfrance was talking about how he backed out like 8 weeks before filming because he had a dream that he was going to die while on set.
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, there's a lot of motorcycle chase stuff in this.
Yeah. But yeah, so he just had a dream he was going to die on set, and he's just like, no, I can't. I have a family. I'm not doing Place Beyond the Pines. So,
by the way, that opening shot in Place Beyond the Pines is still one of the best shots of his whole filmography, I'd say.
I actually want to talk a little bit about that, if it's okay. This is another side tangent. We'll get back on track. But the actual cyclist he used for all the motorcycle stunt work in this, Rick Miller, is the same guy who did all the Dark Knight motorcycle stunts.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
One thing, and he said this in an interview, he wanted actually to kind of give this guy who's done all the stunt work, but when he kind of watches himself on screen and see all these stunts that he put his life on the line just to do, just be cut down to like maybe just a few frames. So he said, I want to actually use this whole kind of like long take realism and capture stunts in their full, entirety.
Yeah.
So that first opening scene where we see Ryan Gosling who, is suiting up. And then obviously there's like the seamless in the cut where, it's obviously then Rick Miller doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But he wanted to show off like, this is the stuff this guy can do. So it's almost kind of like nice how Derek Cianfrance just has this, respect for even not only his actors, but stunt people who put like all their dedication to this work.
Yeah. We might get into it later, but yeah, so that was something I kind of liked about and found out about Derek Cianfrance. He's a very humane person.
Very, yeah.
He's very considerate about people.
Bro, don't hang up. I'm in trouble. I'm in some lady's house. Bro, would you do a favor for me, please? Just one thing, I'll never ask for anything again. Look, don't tell him about me, okay?
Okay, the first time you guys watched this movie, Did you know what was going to happen with Ryan Gosling's character? And did you see that turn coming?
No. And I think that's just like one of the things, like, for, kind of like spoiler warning, we're going to start talking about, I guess, something you want to talk about, which is called the baton pass, right?
Yes. Yeah. So no, yeah. I did not anticipate Ryan Gosling dying, because I thought, he's on the main cover of the poster. It's Ryan Gosling. He's going to be in the whole movie. He's the star, of course.
Yep.
And then he's not. He's the star for a short period of time, but then he's killed off.
Pretty much, Derek Cianfrance does a Psycho on us. He gives us Janet Leigh, and then he takes her out of the picture.
Yes. And so that baton pass of stories was inspired by Psycho. I thought that was fascinating.
Hollywood's trend of killing off the blonde halfway through.
That would explain then why he dyed his hair blonde. When he saw that, he's like, well, this is going to be a tribute to Janet Leigh. Way to go, Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. He wanted to have the most tattoos ever in cinema history.
Okay, can I actually say something? This is a cool story. So, and this is talk about one of my favorite scenes from that movie, but Ryan Gosling was like, he went all out with the tattoos. He's like, I'm going to get a tattoo here. I'm going to get a tattoo here. He even got one of that dagger right by his eye. Mm-hmm. And when they got into production, he's like, oh man, I kind of realized how stupid this looks.
Yeah, he kind of regretted it.
But he's like, maybe I should get this removed. But Derek Cianfrance was like, no, man, you got the tattoo. You need to live with that, man. That's for life.
It fits the character.
Yeah,
exactly.
it does fit the character.
That's the thing.
But the thing is, this whole kind of regret and humiliation that Ryan Gosling had for getting that tattoo, he brought to the set.
Yeah.
And there's that one scene, the baptism scene, where in the script, it's actually written that he's supposed to react in rage and anger. And instead, we get the exact opposite. We get this Ryan Gosling who just comes in, sees his son being baptized by, his girl, as well as like her husband, and him still kind of feeling like an outsider. And you just get this very vulnerable moment of him kind of holding his head in shame as he's watching his son getting baptized.
Yeah, he was supposed to walk in and find a seat kind of in the middle row with like a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And that's not how the scene played out at all, just because kind of going back to what we were talking about with Derek Cianfrance, Derek Cianfrance just lets his actors have the freedom to kind of really inhabit the characters.
Yeah.
They were able to capture that.
And I think it was just a very interesting choice for Derek to kind of like, almost kind of like, I wouldn't say like shame, but kind of like scold Ryan Gosling for like, dude, you got the tattoo. You're going to live with it.
Yeah,
we're not going to put makeup on it. You're going to stick with it.
Like your whole character is like
dealing with this guilt and this shame of this regret.
Of like having made like terrible choices throughout his life.
Yeah.
Well, you got one now too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's just something I think very naturalistic, but even just like this catharsis that he brings to that style and just with his actors. So yeah.
Can I say just how bad I feel for Coffee in this movie? Mahershala Ali's character.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that was Mahershala Ali.
Kofi?
Yeah.
He didn't deserve any of that, man.
He was a good guy. I liked him. He was so great.
He's kind of like a cog in the wheel, and sadly, he just that was just horrible.
Yeah.
Hashtag justice for Coffee.
That's okay. He's got 2 Oscars now, so
all right.
He got his justice.
He got his justice. No, but honestly, I keep forgetting that Mahershala Ali was in this movie.
Yeah,
like when I revisit him, I was like, wow. I forgot he was in this movie.
Yeah.
This might be my introduction to him, honestly.
I think so too. Yeah. I think for all of us, we kind of like, I think this was like our first time seeing him. And honestly, can we just say like this movie just has a great ensemble of characters? Like,
oh yeah.
Even like the 2 kids who play like the other sons. They were like,
okay. Hold up there.
Okay. Are we getting into, is this
No. I mean, I agree with you about the great cast. Okay. So when I first saw this movie, I went to go see it. I went to go see it again, dragged some other people to go see it. And I went to see it a third time. I dragged Katie to go see it. Katie, my wife, she's been on some episodes of the show. She hated it, even though I loved it. But there's one thing that we kind of bonded over this movie was the fact about how much we could make fun of Bradley Cooper's kid in this movie, and the way he
was a wuss.
Like Kid and I still say, "You copping my oxys" around the house. You couldn't understand a damn word that kid was saying in the movie. I mean, and the kid, I'm sure, is a fine actor. Just the character in the movie kind of took me out of it.
Yeah,
I actually really liked his character. Not like. I didn't like his character because his character's kind of an asshole. But
I think that's kind of the point, though.
yeah. But I thought he played the character really well.
Honestly, I think
you're that kid who plays a douchebag in movies from now on.
Honestly, both of those actors really kind of like were in competition for the same role, and even like when they were on set, they were like just trying to size each other up. Like they were constantly doing that. But kind of going back to that whole baton pass when, you know, Ryan Gosling's taken out of the picture and the movie becomes something else.
Yeah.
And it actually becomes this whole story of like, really, I think what the whole movie is about, which is like, you know, this idea of like the sins of the father passed on to the son and that legacy that even though you may try to wipe your hands or bury it, it can't be escaped. Like somehow it's going to resurface again.
Yeah. I mean, the baton pass happens twice in the movie. It happens at the passing of Ryan Gosling's character, Luke, and then again when Bradley Cooper's character decides to kind of essentially turn in almost like the entire police force, detectives and everything like that.
Oh, yeah.
So it goes from...
I say Ray Liotta is terrifying in this movie.
Yeah, he is.
I've never seen a more scary performance just from anybody. And he doesn't even do much.
Just that scene where he pulls over Bradley Cooper and he's just staring at him in the car.
Dude,
chills up my spine.
I love that shot.
Yes.
It's so amazing because it's just like you barely see him. Like you see... I don't know how they set that up, but like the fact that you can just like you see just one tiny bit of his face, just his eye, looking in through the window. Oh my God, that was so cool.
I'm really curious now to know exactly what Derek told Ray Liotta, like his like motivation. Like, so for this scene, you got to do this, and you need to come off this way. I want to know what he told him now because I don't know. I just felt like his whole entire eye would like just come and just like kill like Bradley right there in the car.
Yeah,
it just feels that way.
I mean, I guess that's why when he took him out in the forest, Bradley Cooper just ducked. He just got out of there.
He's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah,
see ya, suckers.
But yeah. Like I said, going back to that baton pass is like happens when Ryan Gosling dies, and so then the story is about Bradley Cooper. Happens when Bradley Cooper turns to the police force. Then it's the story about their sons.
Yep.
And yeah, it's such an interesting movie about kind of like you're talking about. Fathers and their sons, and kind of passing the sins, down the line.
It definitely feels like this was one that I think wasn't this the one that he was like writing at the time he was kind of like finishing up Blue Valentine, because his script writing process is kind of a lengthy one.
Oh yeah, because I mean he took 12 years to make Blue Valentine from like the kind of the original concept, and then 6 years for Place Beyond the Pines.
Yeah.
So he was working on Place Beyond the Pines before I think he'd even begun shooting.
And I think a big factor of that is I think especially with Place Beyond the Pines, or even just like with Blue Valentine, is when he finds his actors, he will kind of intentionally go back and rewrite the dialogue or rewrite scenes just from like the input.
Yeah.
Funny thing is originally he did not want Bradley Cooper to be in this movie. He didn't really think of him.
Oh.
And then once he had like seen Bradley Cooper, met with him and sent him the script, and even when Bradley Cooper was denying, saying like, dude, this is too close to home, I don't want to touch this. He intentionally drove up all the way to set, 5-hour drive, just to meet with him and convince him, like, do this movie. I will write this character just for you.
Wow.
And he kind of like went back and just rematched a lot of the scenes. And I guess that's like part of his script writing process is like why it takes so long is when he gets an actor on board, he brings a lot of their feedback, a lot of their input, a lot of like what they want to do with this character to the page.
Yeah, he was talking about how Michelle Williams should almost be credited on for screenwriting for Blue Valentine, just because he worked with her on the character so much. I mean, I think he was working with her for the movie for like I think it was 11 years or so.
Yeah.
He brought Ryan Gosling on 5 years into working on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he worked with them so much and developing their characters before they even have the money to shoot the film.
Yeah, where he's like still trying to get finance from like investors.
Yeah.
All right, should we move on to his last one?
Yeah. So Light Between Oceans.
Can't just be a coincidence that she showed up.
She's a lovely baby, but you can't keep her.
She needs us. We're not doing anything wrong. I know that you're going to be a wonderful father.
For my dada, with love forever and ever and ever and ever.
What's your name?
Lucy.
Lucy, it was lovely to meet you. Hi.
My sister had a terrible tragedy. Her husband and their baby daughter were lost at sea. You would have been your girl's age by now.
I did not know pretty much anything about this when I started before I started watching it. I knew it had Michael Fassbender, so that piqued my interest, of course. But as far as story wise, I just didn't really know. I think I like this maybe almost as on par with Blue Valentine. I think it's pretty different. It's a different film for him.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think in this one, he wanted structure. He was talking about how he got, after shooting Place Beyond the Pines, he just got way too into his own head. And so he wanted to do something that was not his. So he was shopping around talking to agents and studios, looking for different projects to work on, and finally settled on Light Between Oceans. But yeah, he wanted to do it because he wanted to do an adaptation. He wanted to do something, just get out of his own head, I guess.
Oh, I was going to say that's actually really interesting to me, because this is the movie. I hadn't seen this movie until this watch either. But this is the one that feels, even though it's thematically in the same wheelhouse as far as relationships and children and tension in relationships, it feels like the sort of thing that he would make. But stylistically, it's a lot more locked down and theatrical looking. The story doesn't feel as personal, so it's like it feels like the sort of thing that he would make, but just not something from him. And I noted that while watching the movie, so it's interesting to hear that he was looking to do something that was more of an adaptation as opposed to a personal story.
Yeah. And what's really nice is, I guess when he had was adapting this, he wanted to be as truthful and as honest to the original source material.
Yeah.
I think like the author of the book, when she saw the movie, she just called him up and said, I cried for a day after I saw it, because I was not expecting someone to actually be so faithful to it. And I mean, you look at it, it feels like it has all the stuff that a Derek Cianfrance movie would have.
Exactly.
It deals with family, it deals with husband and wives and children, and this really tough choice that all three characters are trying to make in this.
I mean, he was saying it's essentially a companion piece to Blue Valentine. The quote from him is like, "This movie to me is about love, surviving children. It's about the power of love, and when kids go off to school and when they're 18, that the love is still there." So it's definitely the companion, kind of another extension of sort of themes that were captured in Blue Valentine.
One thing I actually want to comment about this, and this is something that Derek Cianfrance has admitted to all of his works, is he doesn't want to write villains. In all of his works, you look at it, no one is really a villain. They're all characters. They all have good intent. They make choices that obviously go down a different way or paint them in a different color.
Yeah.
You look at all of his work, Blue Valentine, even A Place Beyond the Pines, no one's actually doing stuff just because they're malicious or they want to, be a backstabber and hurt somebody.
Yeah.
It's all of them are doing this because of their own experiences and just what they feel is right, not only for them, but for the ones that they care about. You look at the two characters in this, and both of them have made choices which, are very questionable.
Yeah.
But especially with Alicia, you kind of understand from her perspective, and especially in the first 30 minutes, why she just is pulling his arm to make this decision. And it's like, don't tell anyone about this, because it's like, and that actually was something that was really hard for me to watch, is just getting into spoiler territory, the two miscarriage scenes. Those are really tough to watch.
Yeah. But yeah, like you're saying, that's something I love about his movies, in that no one's no one's the outright villain.
No.
I guess maybe Ray Liotta.
Well, Ray Liotta is just, he's a gangster at heart. He's always wanted to be a gangster, right?
But out of the main characters of each film, there was never a villain. There's never one. Everyone has their own reasons behind doing these things, and their own, wants and desires. And it's so much, that's what I love about it, just because it's so realistic. Anyway, I lost track of where I was going with.
No,
with
and
that,
I think that's just what makes, just like that whole movie, the whole movie is really just these three characters making a decision, trying to own up to it, trying to avoid it, and then coming to a conclusion of like, well, we need to decide this.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, you kind of think to yourself like, oh, well, if I was in that situation, I'd never do that. Well, you can't say that because it's like when you've been through these kinds of elements.
Yeah.
And obviously it's a different time period as well in a different setting. I mean, I actually forgot this was in Australia. So
New Zealand,
my bad, New Zealand. But it's like on that part of the world where
Also,
it's like.
Does no one have accents? I don't.
That's true. No one really
I didn't
did
notice
have
any like New Zealand accents.
Well, I think there was still a lot of people from like the British colonies. I mean, it was still inhabited as
guess.
British colonies. So
But it
like,
didn't. Wasn't that? It wasn't. Anyway.
Yeah,
we're getting off
I
track
totally
here.
get what you're saying.
You know, Janus is where the word January comes from. Named after the same god as this island. He's got two faces back to back. One is looking both ways. Torn between two ways of seeing things. January looks forward to the new year and back to the old. And this island looks in the direction of two different oceans.
So this movie honestly hit kind of close to home for me. I cried during this movie, I'm not gonna lie. I was watching this like in the middle of the day. Like I didn't watch it in segments, but I kind of watched it like here and there where I could. Just based on my time schedule. You know, I watched some of it on the TV. I watched some of it on my phone, but still, this movie really hit close to home for me for a couple of reasons. One is that the little girl in this movie is 4 years old for a good chunk of this movie, and my daughter is 4 years old right now. And I'm finding that movies that deal with fatherhood with little girls really kind of hit me closer to home than usual right now.
I mean, honestly, there's also like there's those scenes where. Okay, when the little girl's torn apart from like these two parents that were raising her, just to go back to Rachel Weisz, there's this scene where it's all done in the backyard. And it's really just hard to sit through because you see Rachel Weisz is just trying to convince her this is your no home, and the daughter just won't
your
believe
name is Grace. I'm not Grace. Oh,
I know that is hard.
Dude.
And kind of growing up now to accept that, like when you're a 5-year-old girl, you can't handle that. And I just like how that was shot. That was shot.
Imagine being ripped from your parents and all of a sudden being told, "No, this is who you are now. Forget what you've known your entire life. This is who you are now."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm your mother, and it's just it's such a heart-wrenching moment.
Yeah.
It's like some of the stuff, some of the questions raised in this movie about parenthood and all that is I've seen versions of in real life, and so it's like watching this. It's really easy to see. All right, the thing that shouldn't have happened was that fateful decision that Michael Fassbender and Alicia Vikander made. When she's pleading with him, let's bury the guy, let's bury the husband, let's keep the baby for our own. Nothing will come of it. And I think the movie does a good job of putting you in the headspace of what would drive them to make this decision because of the two miscarriages they've had and how much they want a child. And this opportunity has come up, which may not ever come up again.
Right.
And the movie does a good job of putting you in the headspace of what would drive them to do that, even though it's the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Then after that, it's a lot more murky about what is the right thing to do after this. So once they found out, about the actual mom, to expose themselves now would be fatal to them and their relationship and just their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And then 4 years later, it's just impossible. It's like, what do you do about the little girl who's been raised to have one set of parents when the right thing to do is to put her in the care of her original mom? But that isn't necessarily the right thing to do in that situation because she doesn't know that woman. That woman is not her mom. As tragic as it may be, that woman has been robbed of a child.
Yep.
But to give her over in that situation would be to rob the child of her parents. And it's just like, it's a heart-wrenching situation because watching it at that point when the girl would be 4 years old, I realized no matter where the movie was going to go, there was going to be no true happy ending because there is no happy ending for this kind of situation because just where you are in that headspace of this little girl, and the grieving mom. I almost think it's, when Michael Fassbender sent her the letter saying, "Oh, don't worry, your daughter is okay." I was thinking like, in her space, that's probably worse than just thinking that her daughter had died. Is all of a sudden knowing that she's still out there and somebody else has her.
It's kind of interesting. And And I want to dabble into a little bit about this, but it almost seems like in all of his films, like Derek Cianfrance is really tackling this subject or this theme of guilt and just like the fears that can spur from that or just the consequences from that. Like in Michael Fassbender's case, he is like really just weighed down with his guilt of what he's done, what he is keeping a secret. And even like after he comes in forward and he's admitted to it, he's the one who's actually willing to go all the way to the clinker and even to the block if it means like his wife or, Rachel Weisz can be spared from just whatever this is. And I don't know. I think you look in all of his films, he's dealing with that. He's dealing with these themes of guilt or just shame or this fear of like, if I stepped into the roles of fatherhood, what are some of the things the mistakes I might make that just will pass on to that? Look at all of that. And it's like, that's a constant theme in all of his movies. He's wrestling with these complexities of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that's what makes his work just so complex, conflicting, but at the same time, really just good to watch. Like it's the reason why I think like with A Place Beyond the Pines, it's almost like a prism or a puzzle that's just unfolding into something else.
Yeah.
And I think that's just what makes it entertaining.
Could I ask you something, Mr. Sherborne?
Yes.
Do ships ever rescue people far out at sea? Have you ever heard of little boats being picked up and survivors taken to the other side of the world, perhaps?
When it comes to the ocean, anything's possible.
Yeah, I will say, I know I mentioned a little bit ago how, partway through the movie, I kind of realized there was going to be no true happy ending for everyone. I think this movie got kind of as close as you could to in that sort of
it did actually
plot though.
Honestly, yeah.
Well, and that's probably just the reason, like the way like he's portraying the book as accurate as possible, and that's definitely how it ends. I did read the book, and it's like, yeah, that's pretty much how it ended, and it's probably as close to a happy ending as it can get.
When I was first watching it, I was actually like pissed off at Alicia Vikander's character. I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're screwing over my boy Fassbender here. What's going on? But it didn't like, I thought that pretty much through almost the entire movie. And it wasn't really until like later on that it kind of finally connected with me and I could see more of her, like I could understand more of her, her motives. Like it just like throughout the majority, like pretty much all the movie, I was kind of pissed off at her character.
But are you talking about the decision she made to screw him over later or earlier, or just all throughout?
All throughout.
Okay.
I was wanting Michael Fassbender to kind of do the, not really, again, it's a very complicated movie, so not really necessarily the quote unquote right thing in sending out the message that the boat had been washed ashore, there was the child still alive, and kind of letting proper authorities take it from there.
Yeah.
But I was kind of rooting for him to do that, just because it's technically the right thing to do.
Well, that was absolutely the right thing for them to do would be to report it.
Yeah.
I mean, for me at least, though, I think it did a good job of putting you in their headspace of seeing why they would do it, despite it being the wrong decision, the obviously wrong decision. I think everything leading up to that point did a good job of showing you what kind of desperation she was led to and what kind of things she had gone. I mean, she had gone through even more than Michael Fassbender with, knocking at the door of the lighthouse when he couldn't hear her and she was out there all night and everything.
That was a tough scene to watch in general. Honestly, this is going to be something that kind of occurred to me, and I was watching this movie and just kind of seeing Michael Fassbender and another character who could have been like him if it kept up to like follow by the rules and stick to protocol, and that was like the inspector character, the one who's kind of like, I go by the book, I go by the rules, and we have to follow this way out. And you look at the very beginning, Michael Fassbender is pretty much that character. He's like, I have to be punctual, I have to be logging everything, it's part of the rules. And really, if you live your life by that, I'm not saying like there's no room for compassion, but you find it harder, especially in the inspector's case, where it just doesn't face him like, well, why would you do that? That's not how the law works. Like, there's a decision that Rachel Weisz wants to do at the very end, and he just is like, I'm dumbfounded. I don't understand why you would do that. And it's because he's just followed, regiment and rules all his life. And you kind of almost think Michael Fassbender could have been like that guy if he didn't allow like a little bit of just to break. I wouldn't say break away from the rules is a good thing, but allow that kind of compassion to shine through. Because I think in some way he turned out a little bit better as a result of it.
I actually wouldn't mind seeing an extended version of this movie that gives a little bit more time to the inspector just on his own before he comes into the story to get a greater understanding. Because I mean, when he comes in, he really wants to nail Fassbender's ass.
Well, yeah, because he has this impression of him. It's like, you buried a guy, you took someone's child. What kind of a monster are you?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if any other scenes of him were around are on the cutting room floor, and the movie is already, I mean, it's over 2 hours as it is. It doesn't feel long to me though. Anyway, but I wouldn't have minded seeing a version of this movie where, in the early section, first half of the movie, putting in more scenes showing him and his convictions and why he's an inspector and what his headspace is and all of this.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that was just kind of like a thought that occurred to me. It's like, if Michael Fassbender had kept to the rules all the time, would he have turned out like that guy and not the person he was in the movie?
I got the impression that Fassbender was worried to lose Alicia Vikander, and that's one of the reasons that he agreed to keep the baby.
True.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. I agree with that.
But yeah, very complex.
Beautiful movie too.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to talk about
like
too.
some of just like the landscape shots and just the ocean shots. I'm like, okay,
gorgeous.
So this is what Cianfrance is like when you give him a budget. Like this is a studio budget, Cianfrance.
Yeah, kind of also talking about how it was the look of the film. This one had a different kind of cinematography style than his two previous ones. His two, Blue Valentine, Place Beyond the Pines, were both kind of almost documentary style, very just like handheld, kind of close up. Whereas this one featured, I think, a lot more kind of establishing shots, I guess, mostly due to kind of the, showing the huge shots of the island that they're on and whatnot. I think I liked the kind of little bit of a change with this one. I don't think the very like kind of same sort of style would have worked really well on Light Between Oceans, especially kind of given the location of shooting on that island. So I'm completely fine with a little bit of change there.
Yeah.
Interesting enough too, when they shot the movie, they actually just like camped out there. Like it took some convincing to get Michael Fassbender to get out there. Michael Fassbender, when proposed with the idea of camping out there, he's like, is it really necessary? Derek Cianfrance had to really kind of rope him in and get him into it. And after a while, he just kind of going back to, again, with how Derek Cianfrance really kind of like facilitates his actors
to try and get into that space.
Exactly. So that they can really just live the character, and so that the acting kind of stops and they're being the character.
And I think this is just a good example of Derek Cianfrance is just one of those indie filmmakers who's kind of come from like those grassroots origins, and it's kind of still kept this just very organic film style. Even when he's given a studio picture, he still brings that. He still carries that with him. And I think that's just one thing. Hopefully, as he goes on with his career, he does more movies, he just retains that, because I think it's just one of his just shining qualities. And it's just, I think, something, even actors, even though they might fight with him on it, I think it's something at the very end, they appreciate him for it, because they're given something really, just some good performances, like some raw and organic things to just see on the screen.
Yeah. And
it'd be kind of interesting when he finally does a comedy, what that will look like.
Oh,
yeah,
that'll be interesting.
Romantic comedy, directed by Derek Cianfrance.
Have him do a slapstick. Go back to those old Chaplin movies.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool if he actually did like he should do a Buster Keaton biopic.
Yeah,
and just do that. That'd be interesting to see how he tackles that.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up.
Yeah. No, thanks for letting us do this. I mean,
Absolutely.
like this was like I said, we all liked A Place Beyond the Pines. I think Joe and I, we really bonded this movie and just this director when we first saw him. So yeah, this is kind of cool just to sit down and finally talk about that.
Next time we have to pick a freaking comedian, because geez, this is so oh my god,
pretentious.
No, excuse you.
Excuse you indeed.
I was gonna say it's so heavy and hard to get through these movies. We got to pick something lighthearted.
Well, I was considering about doing a Kevin Smith, a director spotlight.
Oh, nice. I was saying that, or maybe Judd Apatow.
Judd Apatow would be kind of
him.
cool as well. I think either one of those would be an interesting director's spotlight.
Yeah.
So, Joe, maybe you should take one. I'll take one.
And then I'll do another pretentious one.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Wes Anderson, because you need to do a Wes Anderson.
No, we can do Nicholas Winding Refn next.
We're going to do a director's spotlight way bowl.
Can we do Bronson, please?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We have to do Bronson. Bronson's amazing.
Oh, gosh. I still haven't seen Bronson, actually.
Oh, wonderful, naked, bald Tom Hardy getting his ass slapped.
Great.
Oh my gosh. So that'll do it for this episode of the Film Illiterates podcast. Alex, where can people find you?
You can find me on filmilliterates.com. We got a bunch of old episodes of Film Illiterates to check out, as well as some podcasts as well from earlier on this year. Mm-hmm. If you want to check out what I've been listening to, I'm on Rate Your Music under Half Scrim. Same thing for my anime list. And then I'm on Twitter at Alex D. Patin.
Nate?
You can find me here on the Film Illiterates. I'm also on Instagram. I go for Nathan_Stoner_films. But I also cosplay Star-Lord, so you can actually find me as Starlord_rules. And I do some, events with some Avenger cosplayers. But I'm hoping to do more podcasts in the future. I'm going to venture off into do a couple more of that stuff. So keep your ears open.
And you can find me on Twitter at Film Illiterates and on letterboxd.com/film _film_illiterate. Search Film Illiterates in the users and Letterboxd.
Just type Film Illiterates, will pop up.
Yeah, in the user section. And of course, you can find all of our videos and other podcast episodes on youtube.com/filmilliterates and on filmilliterates.com. That'll be all. And keep watching movies and keep it easy.